are 3 weeks away from Gophers football kicking off the 2025 season against Buffalo on August 28th at Huntington Bank Stadium. So we've now been about 10 days into fall camp. We're close to the season, so it's a great time to talk about some camp storylines and some storylines heading into the year, where the Gophers sit and what they need to accomplish before things kick off in 3 weeks against the Bulls. So I think at camp, the media now has seen two practices: the open practice on Saturday, which the fans were able to see, and then on Tuesday we got another look at the team. And I think there's plenty to take away so far from the Gophers' performance at camp. And I just put together a piece on Gophers on SI talking about the biggest storylines. And I mean, my biggest storyline and the one that I'm monitoring so much when I go to these camps is Perich's offensive role. It's been talked about ad nauseum. Obviously, he's a superstar and the biggest star on the Gophers, so he's going to be talked about often, especially when he's playing a new offensive role like he is. Um, but I still don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, I would not be shocked if he played 5 offensive snaps week 1. I also wouldn't be shocked if he played 35. So I'm just fascinated how the Gophers are approaching the whole situation. If I had to predict based on what I've seen in practice, it seems like they obviously have different periods of practice, the individual drills, offense and defense, and then they do 7-on-7. They do inside run portion, and then they do more of a scrimmage portion. Um, and if you combine all those together, when the wide receivers are getting, I guess, 11-on-11 reps and one-on-one reps live, um, he's been playing about 1 to 2 drives, so to speak, with the first unit offense in these 2 practices. So I if I had to guess, I think it's going to be a drive by drive basis. Again, there's not much that would shock me or that wouldn't shock me um week 1. So but I kind of get a feeling that it's going to be a 1 to 2 drives offensively with the first unit in a game weekly. And then that could continue to grow, that could continue to be less, but I kind of get the feeling that's what it's going to look like. And then after Perich, obviously, everyone's wondering how Drake Lindsey's looking. And what I'm most impressed by is his confidence for a redshirt freshman quarterback. He's he looks mature, he looks confident, he looks comfortable running the offense. He looks like a redshirt freshman quarterback. He makes a few decisions in a given practice where you're like, yeah, that guy's young. Um, that throw could have been better. But I mean, any Gophers fan understands the talent's there. He can make a 60-yard throw look like a 20-yard throw. It does not take much effort for him to launch the ball that far. He can make any throw in the offense, any throw a quarterback can make, he is making. And but I think there's going to be ups and downs. And I think to expect that first road start when he goes at Cal, and then he gets Rutgers at home, that first Big Ten start, does get a favorable schedule leaning into it with Buffalo at home, with Northwestern State, and then to Cal, get the bye week. But I don't think it's going to be a linear thing that he's getting better every single game. I think it, like Fleck mentioned in his opening press conference now 9 years ago, it's going to be, I think, more of like that. And I think there's no reason to be pessimistic. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic. But I would still limit expectations with Lindsey. I think if the Gophers reach their full potential, it's going to be because the offensive line is meshing, because Darius Taylor gets 1,500 yards of total offense. A.J. Turner's the best number 2 in the country. Perich finds his perfect offensive role. Javon Tracy's at number 1. Jamison Gears plays like an NFL tight end. And then Drake Lindsey operates the offense. I don't think the Gophers are going to win any games this year because of Drake Lindsey. And I think that's the biggest thing is he needs to learn how to be a game manager because I think his play style and his potential maybe next year entering his second year as a starter could be more um gunslinger like because I think that's his personality. But I think this year they don't need nor want him to do that. So that's an interesting storyline. But I guess from a camp perspective, I think it's gone as well as you could hope for a redshirt freshman quarterback. And then some other positional battles. The one that I have been watching and monitoring is the cornerback position. I think it's one of the not weakest on the Gophers roster, but definitely one of the biggest question marks. I think Zaquan Bryan is more than capable of being a starting cornerback in the Big Ten, and he will be this year. But I think next to him, there's a lot of questions. John Nestor, the transfer from Iowa, Mike Gerald, redshirt freshman, Jalen Bowden, transfer from NC Central, incoming freshman Naeem Parrish, redshirt sophomore Rylan Kelly. I think all those guys will probably play snaps at some point this year. Um, if I had to guess right now, I think Mike Gerald will start, but it would not shock me if John Nestor started or Jalen Bowden. And Naeem Parrish had the best practice probably out of any corner on Tuesday. He picked off a pass that was intended for Perich and returned it for a touchdown. So that's a really interesting storyline to follow. And I think that competition will go well into the season. And it should be interesting because Brian's a redshirt sophomore. Gerald's a redshirt freshman. Those are 2 starters. That's a really young cornerback room and a lot different from what the Gophers have had. Last year, they had a 5th-year senior with Ethan Robinson and a 4th-year senior with Justin Wally. And the year before that, they had 5th-year senior Trayvon Jones, Wally, and then you throw Coney Durr on the mix. In the mix, they've always had a veteran cornerback room. And this year they don't. Even John Nestor is a junior, and Jalen Bowden's a junior. They don't have a senior in that room. They don't have a 4th-year player in that room, which I think is a really interesting storyline for the defense. Really, the only question I have defensively. I mean, on that side of the ball in general, Emmanuel Carmo will be an interesting one to follow because he's playing a lot of snaps, and I think he will play snaps this year. But I think it could be as the 3rd linebacker behind Baranowski and Devin Williams. Does Baranowski take that step and become a Cody Lindenberg level, Sori Marin level? Um, that's left to be seen. And do the Gophers, those other linebackers they have, that's a deep room they have. They might not have the same high end talent that they've had, but Oklahoma State transfer Jeff Roberson is more than capable of being a Big Ten player. Joey Gerlach's a guy they've liked a lot. And then, I mean, at safety, Darius Green's getting a lot of snaps at nickel as Giante McMillan's out with injury. That defensive line, a lot of players getting a lot of time. Mo Amanode, Purdue transfer, is out with a back injury. Rushawn Lawrence practiced on Tuesday. Um, the the usual suspects of Anthony Smith, Jalen Logan Redding, Devin Eastern playing great. Does Jackson Howard take that next step? I've been impressed by what I've seen from the defensive line specifically, but as a whole, that cornerback room will be an interesting thing to monitor. And then another big question is the offensive line. I Greg Johnson and Ashton Beers um, are the only 2 returning starters, and Beers didn't start every game last year. Greg Johnson did, but they're flip flopping. Beers was a guard last year. He's moving to center, and Johnson's moving back to guard. And then you bring in the 4 transfers they had. I think 2 of them will for sure start. Marcellus Marshall at guard and Dylan Ray at right tackle. But that left tackle battle seems to be wide open. Nathan Roy on Saturday, he was getting first team reps, but he was out on Tuesday. He left Saturday's practice with what looked like cramps, but Khalid Tafai filled in for him at left tackle, the Washington transfer, and I think he's firmly in the mix there. Um, I think they go deep at that position or at offensive line. I think Jaden Ball, the Purdue transfer, can be a rotational guard if there's an injury. I think Tony Nelson can fit in there, Brett Carroll, but they don't have that surefire NFL player. They had Ariante Ursary last year. They had John Michael Schmitz in 23. They had Daniel Falele in 22. And they don't have that this year. I think Greg Johnson could play in the NFL, but he's certainly not a surefire NFL player. I think he's much closer to a Quinn Carroll level talent than a John Michael Schmitz level talent, which is no knock on that at all. Quinn Carroll was a great college football player, but he might not have the same high end potential. So the Gophers, if they want to, I think it's really under talked about storyline. Everyone brings up the quarterback. They bring up the wide receivers. They bring up I bring up the cornerbacks. But the offensive line needs to play well, especially if you're going to go back to being a run first offense. There's a lot of questions on that offensive line. I think they have the talent there to be solid, but it might start slow. And that's gonna, I guess, kind of be my theme heading into the season now. That Buffalo game might not look pretty. So I would temper your expectations. I expect them to win that game. But if they won it 21-10, would not shock me in the slightest. Buffalo's a tough team. And I think this offensive line will get better as the year goes on. I mean, Nathan Roy's a redshirt freshman. Khalid Tafai, I believe, would be a sophomore or a junior, redshirt sophomore, maybe. True sophomore. Um, Marshall and Ray are very experienced, but they not with this team. Ashton Beers, redshirt sophomore. Greg Johnson, true junior. Again, they don't have those like fourth and fifth year guys that they've been having in years in the past. And I guess that's kind of now after we get out of the COVID years, that's gonna revert back to the norm that every team's not gonna have fifth and sixth year guys all over the field. But I think we're seeing that this year with the Gophers, and the offensive line specifically will be an interesting one to monitor. I have full confidence that offensive line coach Brian Callahan can figure out the rotation that works. He always does, and by the end of the year, they'll be have their best rotation, but it might take time. And I think we are seeing that in camp. The defensive line is certainly getting the better part of the offensive line. And then lastly, one storyline that's been standing out to me is the wide receiver room. Last year, the Gophers leaned very heavily on Daniel Jackson, Elijah Spencer, Lemeki Brockington sneaked in there as third option at receiver. But I think it could be really spaced out this year. It would not shock me if we don't see a receiver over kind of that 700 yard range. I'd be pretty surprised if a receiver went over 1,000 yards this year. I'd be very surprised, to be honest, because Daniel Jackson even didn't last year. So um, I think Javon Tracy has that X receiver build and potential, and I think he will be the guy who's running those routes in this offense. But that doesn't mean he's going to get 50 receptions this year. Logan Loya will be in the mix. Lemeki Brockington will be in the mix. Coy Perich will be in the mix. And then redshirt freshman Jalen Smith is making a strong case to get some playing time this season. And he might be one of the better deep threats on their team. He has a serious connection with Drake Lindsey. And I think they're going to try and get him in the mix. And then you add Malachi Coleman as a red zone threat. You add Kenrick Lanier and Nuke Hayes, who are two guys that the Gophers really like at that position. And then Christian Driver in the slot. And that's 7 wide receivers right there. Do I think they're all going to get over 10 receptions this year? No. But I think they'll all play. Some more than others. I think the top 3 is pretty entrenched from a play, like a snap standpoint, with Tracy, Loya, and Brockington. But Coy Perich is going to get in there, and Jalen Smith's going to get in there, and Christian Driver's going to get in there. So um, that'll be interesting to follow because I mean the tight ends and running backs last year I think combined for like 30% of their receiving yards. So there's only so many passing yards and targets that can go around. So um, it'll be really interesting to see how they attack that week one with a redshirt freshman quarterback because it wouldn't shock me if they ran the ball like 40 times week one. So and then you have all these weapons, and I don't know, Tracy get 4 catches, Coy Perich get 2. You throw a bomb to Brockington, and like, would it surprise anyone if they went like if Drake Lindsey was like 14 for 30 for like 175 yards week one? I don't think that would surprise many people. So if he completes 14 passes, there's not many. A couple of those are going to go to Taylor, Jameson Gears. So it's not. There's only so much to go around, is what I'm saying. But I guess to wrap up the discussion, some underclassmen players that stand out to me. Femi Ishiboy is definitely a big one that I think um, arguably has usurped Cameron Davis, the Washington transfer, as RB3, I think. Um, but Davis, I would put kind of in that like Bryce Williams tier. If there was an injury, I think he would be the guy who would like bump up to RB1 because he'll like get you 3-4 yards every carry and he won't fumble the ball, but he doesn't have the same big playability as your boy or AJ Turner. Um, but it is your boy when Darius Taylor graduates or doesn't graduate, but he's going to go to the NFL. At least he should because he's that good. After this year, is your boy and AJ Turner if he comes back. That's a fun duo next year that I think Gophers fans should be excited about. And then defensively, I guess we talked about the corners. The defensive line, I think there's plenty of potential long term there. But it's been a good, I guess, almost 2 weeks of practice on Sunday, and there's a lot of reason that people are optimistic about this team, and I think it's rightfully so. They have a lot of talent all over the field, and if they can get consistent play from Drake Lindsey, I think this team has a really high ceiling. So it should be fun to watch. As always, I appreciate you guys for listening. Make sure you check out all of our written work over on Gophers on SI, Vikings, Twins, Timberwolves as well. Um, Make sure you leave a like on this video, hit subscribe. It will help us get found. And until next time.